Hey, folks, welcome to the pre show. Greetings. Happy Friday to everyone. Still getting my mic set up, but that's what the pre show is for. We've got about 2 minutes left, minute and a half left, and we go live over on Odyssey Radio, which here is a note for you after this next week, I believe. Odyssey Radio is going to stop broadcasting. So everything we're going to be doing will still be through Odyssey, but we're going to be doing it over on my YouTube page instead of at the radio station. Russ has a few things going on that he's got to drop something out, and the radio station has got to be it for right now. So for right now, Odyssey Radio is going to take a hiatus. We've got less than a minute left, and we are going live on both the audio over at Odyssey Radio and also on the YouTube channel. So I'm just making sure we are all set up. All our levels are testing 1, 2, testing 3, 4. And we shall see what we shall see. We got about got my new glasses in, but my bifocals, of course, are on the bottom. So I'm going to tip my head way up like that to read anything. Let's see. We got about 20 seconds left. And we're going to go live. So everybody stand by. We're going to go dark, and we'll see you in the chat room. So stand by. Here we go.
The Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Intelligent talk indeed. Folks, welcome to the program. I'm your host, Scotty Roberts. This is my show, the Intrepid radio program. You are listening probably one of two ways tonight, either over on the radio station, Odyssey Radio, that's ODYSY radio.com, where you can hear this show in its audio format only, and you are catching it live in a video simulcast over on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Scotty Roberts, or you might be catching it over on my Patreon page. And that is patreon.com. I think it's Mr. Scotty Roberts. I don't know why I do this every time. I want to say it. Patreon.com/Scotty Roberts. No Mr. You could also catch it over on X, formerly Twitter, at Mr. Scotty R. Mr. all spelled out, M-I-S-T-E-R, Scotty, initial R, over on X.com. And you can watch it there as well. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to the show. I see Susie Q is here in the show. And we've had several others, and now they dropped, and now hopefully they'll be coming back into the chat room. I know there's several more of you out there that are not tuned into the chat room. If you want to join the chat, that is probably the very best way to enjoy this show. Hang on a second. I got to open this. Oh, it's not ice cold anymore. I forgot about it here. That's interesting. I needed a little energy boost. I didn't make coffee, but my son had this Monster juice right there. And so I'm trying that out. And I thought, what is that going to taste like? It's not so bad. So, hey, Susie Q over in the chat room and everybody else who is unfaced at the moment that are there. Thanks for coming in. Come on in if you want to chat. And I will paste. This will be for later for the captain's cabin. I'll wait for that. We can't take calls until the captain's cabin. That's just because of the weird connection we have with into the stream, into the radio station. Now, that's going to end next week because Russ is going to pull Odyssey Radio and shut it down for a while. Now, he will still be in essence, I'll be broadcasting through Odyssey Radio, but we're going to be doing it just solely over on my YouTube channel. And once we're over there, we're going to be able to probably take calls within the show because we are not using the streaming software, which has blocked our ability to bring in guests. Not that you can't see them, it's that I can't hear them when we are broadcasting live on radio for some reason. We have never been able to work out that glitch with this software and all the programs. So it'll be nice to be able to do some things perhaps live during the show, do some live interviews. So that'll be coming up. So good to see you all coming on in. Welcome, Morgan Snow. And tonight, a kind of a light paranormal show. I know that we get so much paranormal stuff and have over the last 15 years, and it's growing and building, and we're seeing more and more, and we're getting more research, but we have to keep getting entertained with this and educated with this and illuminated with this deeper and deeper and better and more scary, more spooky, more scientific, more stuff. And the simple stuff like this, how do you know if your house is haunted? Are things that we don't talk about all that much anymore. And they tend to be relegated to the realm of the overly simplistic, the side of the paranormal. The stuff that, this is what you talk around about with coffee and tea cakes or tea and tea cakes, as opposed to really digging in deep into the paranormal. And so I thought that some of the information I have here is pretty good stuff. It's a little light. Many of us may know a lot of this stuff already, and some of us may not. So the big thing I'm going to be addressing tonight is the 10 signs that you just might be living in a haunted house and what to do about that. Do you want to keep them? Do you want to get rid of them? I saw some video. My daughter was watching a little bit of a story here this afternoon. My daughter, after school, she was watching one of those YouTube, the 55 most haunted videos or scariest videos. And she's watching through them. And I've watched some of these with her before, and I'm kind of paying attention from the other room. And it had a young couple who was having stuff going on in their house. And they believed poltergeist activity. So they set up cameras and they started filming things. And they also had other cameras going. And they're in the kitchen one day. They're arguing. They're a young couple. And they're arguing. And it didn't sound staged at all. It sounded like a genuine, the kinds of stuff that married people argue about. And as they're talking, things start falling off the shelves on different sides of the rooms. And the woman is so scared. She starts crying. She runs out. And they're sitting in the car. And the guy's sitting like this with his head in his hand. And he's filming this. He goes, look, he says, I don't know what just happened, but we're out of our house. And his wife's just crying in the background. And so it said that they, the voiceover said, so they decided to come back and they thought they had a surefire method to get rid of the ghost, whatever it was. And they lit some incense and they had a camera going on the tabletop, lit some incense, and they started trying to conjure a spirit to talk to them. And I looked at Rainey, I said, that's not how you get rid of a ghost in the house or a spirit in the house. That's not the way to do that. And of course, that just got worse and worse and worse in the video clip and ended up with not happy things happening. So it didn't get any better for them that evening. So I thought maybe there's some of this stuff that is simple, but we don't know a whole lot about it. And hey, Elderberry, good to see you. Boo, he says. Claudette, good to see you tonight. And who else we got? Morgan Snow and Susie. Oh, that's it so far. See, this is a topic you can tell. It's a topic. It's being lightly attended tonight because people have like I've heard this 10 times before, this kind of thing. Well, maybe there'll be something in here you haven't learned. Maybe some of you are far and beyond any of the information that's given in this, but I think it's good for fun conversation. And we'll see where this goes tonight. And by the way, I got my new glasses. There's my new bifocals. I neglected to get the non-glare coating on them, which I should have done. And you can see there, look at that. Ooh, glare. So I don't know if I can take them back and get it redone. I've just got to get a new pair of glasses next time I do and put non-glare coating on them. So I need them to read. I got to go like this to see my screen, though, with my bifocals. I don't like that. So I'm going to struggle to try to not have to use them tonight. And we'll go through this stuff. I think this is interesting stuff, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So let's start out. And we're going to, like I say, cover this topic that might be rudimentary for some of you, but maybe some of you never heard this stuff. So I'm taking a look at the 10 signs that your house is haunted and what you can do about it. And in this little topic tonight, we're going to look at the signs of what makes a house haunted. Things that you can look for. We're going to explain what to look out for when you're perhaps investigating that house. And you have to remember that magic is for believers and practitioners of magic. But that this stuff can also serve simply as a guide to getting in touch with yourself, magically or not, finding out what's going on. So we're going to try to dig just slightly deeper than the surface issue might imply that we're going to. So the first question we ask, and this is about as rudimentary as they come, are ghosts real? And it's a question that we've all asked. We've all asked ourselves. Many of us have answered that for ourselves because we've had experience. We've seen things, we've touched things, or vice versa. They've touched us. We've experienced what to do. Many of us have gone ghost hunting or paranormal investigating, however you want to look at it. Some of us have done it for the thrill seeking of it, as others have done it to want to learn more. And I think for me, what drives it for me has always been deep curiosity. I want to know what the heck is going on. I want to see what I can see and talk with something. I just want to know what's there. And it's not that I don't have a belief system. It's that, people say, well, if you don't see and you still believe, Jesus himself said, blessed is the man who does not see and still believes. Well, that's referring to Christianity, referring in people's belief in him. But I think belief is also heavily bolstered by experience. I don't want to just believe because belief, everybody's got a belief of one form or another. It doesn't prove anything. And I don't want to, as Richard Feynman said, come to the end of my days and realize that the things I believed all along were the wrong things. I don't want to believe. I want to know things. I doubt. I ask questions. I want to know things. That's why I do what I do when I do it. So we've all asked ourselves, do ghosts exist? It's going to be a different answer for believers and a different answer for those who aren't believers or are skeptics. You've all heard the bump in the night and noises. Some of you smelled the weird odors that aren't just your husband. And you've experienced bizarre dreams. And thanks to our culture obsession with haunted houses and hauntings and ghosts and spirits, you've seen your share of ghost movies, ghost investigation television shows. All this stuff is out there. So, does this mean that when you experience the bumps and the smells and the sounds and things moving and all of this other thing that are signs of what could be a haunting, that your house is haunted? It's that time of year when right now, spring, everything's renewing. The house is expanding a little bit, or is it contracting? What does it do? It contracts in the winter, expands in the warmer months. You're going to hear more pops, more sounds, more things like that. And so you have to ask yourself, what am I hearing? Am I hearing physical? Am I hearing nature? Am I experiencing the physical and the natural? Or is there something more to it? And how do you know what makes the veil between the dimensions thinner? How do we know? Is it always thin? Is there always something there? Sarah says, Yusuf in the chat room, there are different levels of infestation. That's very true. And so infestation has such a negative, heavy sound to it. Is it always infestation when there's a spirit or a ghost? Is it never not infestation? What is it that makes something stay there if it's there in the first place? So, unfortunately, saying Beetlejuice 3 times isn't going to get rid of paranormal entities in real life. But there are some, if you will, pagan approved, witch approved tips and tricks that you can use to feel more secure about your space and do things that'll maybe make it smell sweeter sometimes, maybe have less bangs and bumps, less things out of the corner of your eye that you're catching. But you'll need to get versed on how to tell first if there is a ghost or a spirit nearby in your dwelling, in your house. And here, I'm going to take this off. Sorry, I've got that up there. I forget it because I get to talking and I forget I've got that header graphic up there. So, let's take a look at this. How do we get versed on what's a ghost if our house is haunted? How do we know what won't entail Ouija boards and weird rituals and things like that? Now, we can learn the signs of a ghost that can help prove that you've got somebody there. And I'm going to look at some tools and what you're going to need to rid your home of spectral roomies. You never know what's going to be there, and you don't know what you're going to be able to do to get rid of them. And do you want to get rid of them is the big question as well. Because, when we had some hauntings in my house when I first met Rainey, and you've all heard, those of you who are regulars have heard this story before, that Rainey was over at my house with a couple of friends, big storms in our city, and it knocked her power out. And I was a friend, and she asked if she could come over and bring some stuff over and store it in my freezer till her power was back up. I'm like, sure, come on. Now, when I say we were friends, we knew each other. And she'd been to little gatherings at my house a couple of times, but we were not like buddy yet. We weren't friends. So we knew each other. And I thought, oh, that's cool. Rainy. Hot, rainy. Cool. She wants to come to my house to store her frozen foods. She's bringing her friend Kat and my friend Carrie, who was also a friend of all of us, dating Kat at the time. And they all came over. And we had that ghost experience that night. And Rainey did. And they were going to spend the night because there was no air conditioning. It was very hot and humid here during the storms. And she opted to just go stay in her house that has no electricity in it. Now we're just going to go back and stay at my house. She said she didn't want to stay the night after that. So there's that. So I want to look at, Are there ghosts? What are ghosts? I want to look at scientific proof of ghosts. Is there any? Then look at what are the 10 signs that my house could be haunted? And how about ghost busting 101? How do you get rid of these things if they're there? And that's the option I had. I started telling that story about Rainey coming over again because the next day when I'm all alone in the house and more of it manifested even during the daytime, the sunlight, the beautiful sunlight streaming in through the windows, and some of the same things happened. And if you know the story, the drawers opening up and closing and all of that. And I remember I get chills down my back, and it doesn't frighten me or anything. Just talking, relaying that information. And I remember saying at the time, hey, look, if there's somebody here in my house, if you're a ghost or a spirit, you don't have to go. You can live here. You can be here, but don't bother my children. I said, there is one mandate I will put down. I said, if you want to share this space, you don't scare my children. I said, if you do, I said, I will make sure that you will be sent away in the most horrific of ways I can think possible. That was the way I felt about it. And so I wasn't afraid having the ghost there or the spirit. Now, of course, I wasn't thinking in terms of evil spirits at the time, but I just made it very clear. If you want to share this space, you can, but you don't do any evil shit and you don't scare my kids. Is kind of what it came down to. So, are ghosts bad? That's going to be one of the last things we look at. So what are ghosts? There's the first question. What is a ghost? So generally speaking, people use the term ghost to describe people who have died and passed on to the afterlife of some sort. And across cultures and generations, the definition can change in many, many ways, and sometimes very big ways. And in some communities, they may call ghosts ancestral spirits, and others will refer to them as angels. Well, they're never going to be an angel, by the way. People can refer to them as that. But if you're looking at an angel is a specific kind of created being. You don't become an angel when you die. I mean, what kind of weird notion? Whoever came up with that, I don't know. Angels are specific kinds of beings. They're not ghosts of people that have passed on. One thing that all these communities have in common is that they're no longer the whatever the entity is. It's no longer living in the world that lives around us. They've crossed over into some other dimension. They're not breathing human beings, and they're not existing in the same way that they once did. For a ghost to show up in this world, in this dimension, they have to cross some sort of threshold or boundary. We're going to talk a little bit about how that manifests. And it's commonly believed that ghosts frequent the places they were familiar with when they were living. That's one of the commonalities in the stories, is that they frequent these places they've known. And it's really no wonder one of the first questions on someone's mind before a big move can be, is this house haunted? We were driving around old neighborhoods today, Rainey and I, this morning. It was a first really nice weekend, and there were garage sales everywhere today. And so Rainey and I took some time this morning after the kids were all supposed to be at school, and we drove around and we looked at a bunch of garage sales. And when we're doing it, we're going through some of the neighborhoods with the older Victorian houses around here and saying, I wonder how many of these houses are haunted. And Rainey goes, every one of them. So the truth is that there's no exact definition or explanation around what a ghost is, how it can be, where it is, how it gets there. But there's a difference between a ghost and the memory of a loved one who's passed. Death is a very intimate topic, and it's easy to mix the two up as grief enters the scene. The presence of a loved one is more often than not a comfortable physical feeling. It's manifested by our minds. And it may be a smell, the olfactory nerve, or a visual that reminds you of the person. But a ghost, that feeling could be a little more unsettling. Ghosts might stick around familiar people due to what they call unfinished business, become cliche, or unresolved traumas that they experience at the end of their life. And in some cases, they may not even know that they've passed on. We've encountered some of those. They don't know they're dead. And technically, they're not. They're just no longer alive in this plane, on this in this life. So, and I do see a few comments over there in the chat room. What does Sarah say here? Paranormal is a means of explaining what is not understood and explained by usual personal perspectives. Right. Outside the normal, the extra normal, you can say. Should have made them pay rent, said Sarah. Yeah, right. So, non-corporeal energetic entities. That's a good way to look at it, too. So, is there any scientific proof of ghosts? You know, I think we do have some, and I think we've gotten very close to there being a lot more acceptance. You see, it's a lot more accepted than it used to be, because there's more and more evidence being picked up. And there's no one study out there that proves the physical existence of ghosts. But that doesn't mean they don't exist. That doesn't mean we don't have heaps of evidence that they exist. And it's been a topic of conversation among experts for generations and people since almost the beginning of recorded history. And some are touting laws of physics that can't possibly be broken, and others finding the cracks in the fact. And now here's something interesting. A British engineer named Vic Tandy made a discovery in the 1980s around infrasound. And this describes low-frequency sound below the level humans can hear, hitting between 0.1 and 20 hertz. And while we may not be able to hear sounds at this plane, they do have an impact on the environments around us. These kinds of sounds can mess with our other senses and add to a feeling of unease or eeriness. And remember to put it all in perspective that ghosts play into the belief of an afterlife, which is directly connected to so many religious beliefs, and there isn't always exact science behind any of it at all. It's faith and it's belief. So, yeah, the Sumerians had ghosts too, Morgan Snow over in the chat room said. You're absolutely right about that. So, also, things like EVPs, which now everybody knows of. Back when I started doing this 20 or more years ago, we didn't really know that much about EVPs. And then with the advent of television shows and recording for EVPs and so on, everybody started picking up on it. And now there is so much recorded evidence out there. It's unreal. I've got a lot of that recorded evidence. Plus, there's all kinds of devices that are being used to try to pick up, not per se, oh, it's a ghost meter. No, it's a scientific piece of equipment that is able to gauge whether or not there is something that is, in a sense, breaking the atmosphere, for a lack of any better way to say it, around you. You're picking up sounds. You can pick up visuals. Sometimes you can see physical manifestations of ghosts. Other times you can just see the effects or the what's the word I want to use for it? Not residual, not external. It's not, you're not seeing the ghost, but you're seeing a scientific look at the, if you will, the ripple in the ether that is made. And you can see certain things, which makes it very interesting now as we move along through the last 20 years, what we're able to see now. So I think there's a lot more evidence than there used to be. So, is my house haunted? Here's the 10 things, according to my my show graphic, these are the 10 things that you can look for. There's some signs of ghosts in a room. And those of us believe in ghosts know not all poltergeists present as the same kind of full-bodied apparition as we've often seen in all the horror movies. They don't always manifest that way. And, that's the movies. And if you suspect your house could be haunted and you're wondering how to see a ghost, you may need to look for slightly more subtle proof instead. In order to claim that a ghost is really present in your living space, 5 or more of the following signs should really be crossed off your checklist. Keep in mind that for each of these otherworldly signs, there might very well be a simple worldly explanation, which is why it's a good idea to think critically about any possible alternatives before jumping to paranormal conclusions. That's why at times I get really tired of, we have to debunk everything first. Well, you don't always have to. We do it so we can, in our own minds and as we present it to others, have that ability to check things off the list. Okay, you're going to question this. Let's go through this so we can check it off the list. I already believe it's real, but let's check it off the list anyway. Sarah says, revelation means great unveiling. Maybe the paranormal realm will be more accessible at the end of days. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know of anything in end times prophecy personally. I don't know of anything that says, and there's going to be more ghost sightings, or we're going to have more efficacious views of spirits. I don't know. I don't see that. And you're talking revelation. I don't know if you're trying to relate that to the book of Revelation, which is not the only book of end times. And the book of Revelation does a lot more than just the end times as well. So it's interesting, though, Sarah. Thank you for that over in the chat room. Here's the first thing. 1, how to tell if your house is haunted. You've experienced a strange, creeping feeling like someone's watching you. What was that? Did you hear that? I get this weird feeling. You hear that all the time. So people who believe they've experienced paranormal activity often note a sensation that someone or something is watching them while they sleep. Whether you've noticed the feeling of having eyes on you or simply get the sense that you aren't actually alone at home, both scenarios point toward haunted house vibes. That said, our anxieties can definitely cloud our intuition here. If you live with your family or have roommates, try asking if anybody else in the house is identifying a little too closely with the lyrics of Rockwell's "Somebody's Watching Me." Or if it's possible, you've watched maybe one too many scary movies lately. Do you know if you do that? Even me. There are times where I can watch some scary shit on TV or YouTube or whatever. I go to bed, sometimes I turn on some of these haunting shows, and some of them are intense enough that I'm like, oh, dude, I'm sleeping with the lights on tonight. Sorry, honey. I need the lights on. Why? Because it piques this psychological curiosity that I have. And so be careful what you watch sometimes, and that you're not letting your imagination run away with you. Number 2, there are odors that we sometimes pick up. They inexplicably emerge from a localized area during a specific time of the day. And it can be an odor that is repugnant. It can be foul. We've all heard the "I smelled sulfur," which is supposed to signify Satan or demonics. It's like, really? How do we know? What makes us think that a demon is going to smell like sulfur? Where do we ever pick that up? Did the demon handbook say, by the way, demons smell like sulfur? Sometimes you can smell tobacco, sometimes roses, sometimes, good scents as well. So, hot, LOL, no AC at the moment, says Morgan Snow. Grumpy Stack says he farted. I farted. Grumpy, how you doing? Good to have you here. Paranormal seems to be a whole mix of different types of energies, says Sarah. Indeed, it does. Grumpy's watching Rainy. Where's Rainy? Is she doing a show? She's not here right now. No, she's upstairs. So odors sometimes. But just because you're randomly smelling rotten eggs or perfume, and for your sake, let's hope it's the latter, it doesn't automatically mean you've got a stinky poltergeist or some kind of evil entity afoot in your house. There's a medical term that doctors use for olfactory hallucinations or smells that aren't actually there. It's called phantasmia. 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 And they can be caused by everything from an upper respiratory infection, inflamed sinuses, to certain medications, aging, trauma. And I'm telling you this, the goal isn't to send you to the actually scariest corner of the internet, WebMD. I just want you to acknowledge the fact that there are often multiple explanations for things that we think are signs of a ghost. So be sure to rule out all the possible causes. If you've got something that's stinky in your house and you're only picking it up at certain times, now something I've noticed, you ever lived in a house where you moved in and the former residents had cats? And no matter how much they cleaned that house, the house may smell fresh and lemony when you walk in, but then you have a spike in humidity outside, and you've got humid air in the house, and all of a sudden you're going, our house smells like cat box. And you don't know why. Some people don't know why. Well, it's the humidity. But, the periodic smells is what I'm talking about. You ever get those? And sometimes it might be something. And I think you're going to kind of notice the difference. There's going to be a difference between that and a ghost. So, or a spirit or an entity of some kind. Now, I have to tell you, to be very honest, I haven't encountered a lot of the olfactory signs of there being haunting in my home. I haven't really run into that. I've not really ever had you smell the rotten eggs? No. If we had things smelly in our house, there's times we walk in from being gone all day and we go, man, does our house always smell like that? And what am I picking up? I'm picking up cigarette smoke, which we don't smoke in the house, but the former residents did. And as much as it's been cleaned, on certain days you can smell it. And or a cat box. I'm like, I don't like the smell of cat boxes. It's like, we got a cat. If I smell the cat box, there's going to be big changes coming. So all those things play into it. And my girls get all this stinky, skanky, sweet-smelling perfume for young kids. Oh, I got this bottle of perfume that I got this for $4, Dad. Oh, don't spray it all over the house, please. So if you think your house could be residually haunted, you might want to do a quick Google check, because weird sounds is number 3. Of whispering voices might indicate that another being is trying to get your attention. That's a big one. I think if I'm going to start hearing voices, that's a biggie. Or there's might be a residual haunting in your home. And a residual haunting is when a spirit replays and relives a past event over and over. And sometimes it's not even the spirit, it's a loop. And it's getting into describing the difference. One is a being, an entity, and the other might not be at all. But in this scenario, your house is being haunted by the echoes of this event more so than by an entity itself. And many people believe that the physical spaces can soak up and hang on to energy, whether that's the energy of happy events or less than pleasant ones. The thing about certain types of stonework that can absorb that is very interesting. Just by Scotty's criteria, I'm haunted by living relatives, says Sarah. You got some stinky relatives? Oh, sorry to hear that, Sarah. Let me take a drink. Now, if you are having a problem with the lighting in your house, flickering or flashing lights, this is number 4. It's like the show Stranger Things style light anomalies. Could also, or light fixtures not working. Could be signs that your house is haunted or that you really need to call an electrician because you may have bad wiring. And I'm not saying that as a joke. Many times there are people who think, well, this is signs of the paranormal and it's really bad wiring. It's worth checking out if you're having problems with that. People who believe in the paranormal often cite electricity as a means for ghosts to communicate, and lights that turn off and on seemingly of their own accord are worth paying attention to. And that's simply or similarly true if you spot a flash of bright light that often occurs in a specific part of your home. Something that owners of houses have experienced many times, especially the ones that come out on the other end with ghost stories. They might see some interesting things in the lights. So you watch that. If your lights start flickering, check it out. Make sure it's not just a loose light bulb or a loose wire. And check it out. So start looking at these. These are signs that you might have a haunted house. This is one of them, but you got to check it out. So the smells, the sounds, the bumps, lights. Number 5, frigidly cold areas of a room, as well as a sudden drop in temperature. Though usually between 20 to 30 degrees can mean there might be a ghost or a spirit among you. And when they start manifesting, what do? They tap the energy that's available. And sometimes it's just the heat in the room or the warmth of the room can get sucked up. And this is kind of a classic sign amongst signs of ghosts for about as long as humans have been telling ghost stories. So both phenomena, centralized cold spots in a home, as well as noticeable temperature dips, are referenced frequently by people who believe that they live in a haunted house. And that said, it's worth noting that our body's physical responses to fear, which include goosebumps, body hairs standing on end, clammy hands, mimic the way we respond to cold temperatures. So it's totally possible this is a chicken or an egg scenario. And so you've got to look into that. The cold spots can be a big tale teller, especially if they move around. Number 6, TVs or electronic devices turning on and off can be a sign that an entity is pulling its energy from your power source, just like with the lighting. Similar to lights and that flash off and on, a ghost may also try to communicate with you through things like your physical electronics or batteries. Do you often find that your phone or your laptop gets inexplicably zapped of energy, despite the fact that you left it plugged in and it's all charged up? Does your remote not work for long, no matter how many new batteries you put into it? I know when I was in Egypt and I went out at John and Maria's site of Gebel El Silsila, they were all working on the east bank of the Nile at a site over there, on their site, a site within the site. And I was over on the west bank. Took my couple of cameras and recording devices, and I went off and I was exploring the 30-some shrines along the west bank of Gebel El Silsila. And some of them are right close to each other, they're like 2 bedrooms put side by side. And sometimes there was a little walk in between to get to them. And they usually were carved in the bluff or cliff faces, hillsides facing the river. And there was one point I reached one afternoon where I walked in there and I'm filming and my camera quits. I'm like, damn it. Then I pick up my other camera and that one quit too, and my phone quit. And all my batteries were suddenly dead. And when I had left the boat, which was our dig house, moored half a mile down the river, or upriver, I had everything was fully charged half an hour earlier. So I've had things like that happen. Everything is drained. Now, nothing in particular manifested itself, but that's what happens. Things get drained. Why? Because they're drawing energy to try to manifest something. Number 7, you've heard peripheral ghost sightings. This is what it sounds like. A peripheral ghost sighting is a glimpse of a shadowy figure from the corners of your eyesight. And it's like, oh, you know what? I get them all the time. All the time. Sitting at this desk, I'll be sitting here like this, just staring at my computer, working on something, and my peripheral vision off the sides of the computer screen, something moves over there, and I just go, and I don't see anything. That happens all the time. Doesn't scare me, just happens. I see it all the time. And people who believe in spirits believe that they tend to move kind of fast, meaning they appear to be dancing or look like a flickering shadow in the distance. And some ghosts, too, are thought to only ever appear in the form of a shadow, making a direct, full-on look at one less likely. And there's actually a whole subset of paranormal internet folk who believe in entities called shadow people. And it's not just internet-y folk, it's real folk. So there's the movements and things you just see out of the corner of your eye. Number 8, missing objects that are 5. Had this happen to me. They're found in strange areas of your home and in places other than where they were left or usually kept. And this can be a slippery slope for those of us who are maybe a little forgetful or absent-minded. While it's usually safe to assume that you simply misplaced an item, if it's found somewhere, you would never think of leaving it. And that might be a sign of paranormal hijinks. Many ghosts are thought to be mischievous versus actually threatening in nature, which means that finding your phone in the microwave could be Casper's idea of a good joke. Try paying special attention to where you've left things, including creating designated spots for items like your wallet, your keys, so that you can potentially rule this one out. Now, I will tell you, with a family like mine, I am constantly harping on the idea, not even the idea. My rule is, if you use something, put it back when you're done with it so the next person can find it. One of the big things is like the remote for the television upstairs. There's 2 remotes for our big 75-inch TV upstairs in the main room. And if you want to sit down and watch TV and eat a sandwich for lunch, you reach for that remote and it's not there. Okay, who was the last one who had the remote? Then I start looking at all the typical spots. Is it over there on that table, or on the TV stand, or is it here? No, usually you know where you can find it? Tucked down in the cushions of the sofa or some other room somewhere. Somebody's walked off with it and set it down. And one of my big things is, when you turn that TV off at the end of the night or the end of your session and watching what you're watching, put that tuner on this spot or this spot so the next person can find it. And it's that way with almost everything in my house. It's that way. I'm constantly harping on, Dad, where's the dozen? And I'm like, well, where did you leave it last time? I don't know. I said, well, if you put it away, I said, I'll help you find it. You don't need me to lecture you right now. You need me to help you find it. But you know why you can't find it? You didn't put it away. We had one of my children, I think it was yesterday morning, couldn't find her shoes. There's piles of shoes by the door of the house. It's like, I've told them, take your shoes off, put them on the rug. Take your shoes off, carry them in your room and throw them in the bottom of your closet. Get them out of the main room. If you put that in the same place every day, you'll know where to look for it when you can't find it. It's that simple. So all I'm saying is sometimes ghosts like to play tricks with us. You know, I had this ring, this St. Benedict's ring here, that went missing over a year ago. Now, that one never showed up again. I don't know whatever happened to it. Just gone. I bought this. This is a new one. I bought this a few months back to replace it. I waited a year and I said, I'm going to replace it. Now, you see these rings. I got rings on this finger. And one is my wedding ring from Rainey, and the other one is a ring she got me at one of the festivals. And I wear it like that. And this ring went missing. And it was really bugging me. And I couldn't find it anywhere. And it was gone for weeks. I just thought, it's gone. And now, the only places that I can think that I ever take off my rings, kitchen sink or the bathroom when I'm washing my hands. Sometimes I don't take these two off, these three, 1, 2, 3. I don't take these off at all. This one I'll take off because it's just big. I get water under it. I don't like that. So if I take them off, I lay them right there. Well, I couldn't find it anywhere. A few weeks go by. Remember, we put in last fall, early winter, we started putting in wood flooring in the main room and down the hall of our house. And when we're ripping up the carpet, this is old carpet. It's been in this house for 20 years, I'm sure, if a day, before we ever moved into it. So I'm tearing up the carpet. We get all the way down the hall by the kids' bedrooms and the corner of the hallway that comes into the corner just beyond the few inches of the wall space beyond my daughter's bedroom door. And it's all tacked down. You know how carpet's tacked down. And we're ripping this carpet up off the floor. And I pull it out of the corner and snap it back as I'm tearing it off of the nail board down there. And I see something move and I hear ping, 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 ping on the floor. And I look and here's this ring. You know where it was? It was underneath the carpet in the corner of the hallway. How'd it get there? I don't know. That's weird to me. And if it had been on top of the carpet, which it wasn't, the question people would ask, you sure it wasn't on the top of the carpet? Well, no, I was down there tearing up carpet. I saw we had to do everything. We cleaned it, we vacuumed it and all that. And then we started tearing it all out of there. And so it was underneath the carpet at the far end of the house, the hallway that ends with my son's room on one side, my daughter's room on the other, and the corner underneath the rug. How'd it get there? I don't know. Maybe it has something. I'm just glad I have it back. And it may sound superstitious, but when I found it, I looked at the house and went, thanks for returning it. Was that it? How did I get it under the carpet? Did I drop it under the carpet? I don't know how I did that. That's weird to me. Very weird. So good night, Kalina. Good to see you. You're out of sorts. Hope everyone has a good weekend. Sorry to hear it, Kalina. Thanks for stopping in, though. Letting us know. You're welcome back in if you get your sorts back. So things can get hidden on us. missing objects, missing things. 9, you have strange dreams that you've never experienced before. And at night, you feel a sensation of touch, as though something or someone is reaching out to you. No, thank you. Don't do that to me in my sleep. And I've told ghosts in the house, I've said, you can contact me, but don't wake me up and hover over my bed at night because I will pee my sheets. Don't do that to me. That happens sometimes. Number 10, your pets are acting strange. That happens, you know. Your pets act funny. They either see things we don't or they sense things we don't, and it's weird. Now, we didn't even get into how to get rid of ghosts. I'll give you the quick on it because we've only got a half a minute left, radio audience, before we leave. Ghost them, literally. Block them out. Tell them to leave you alone and ignore them. Cleanse your living space, and there's ways to do that. Protect yourself, and there's ways to do that. Bring in positivity, there's ways to do that. Be salty. Pour black salt around your home. Make a circle of protection. Make your dreams sweeter. Before you go to sleep, cast a circle of protection with your finger in the air. 7, get help from a professional. And so those are the things you can do. We didn't get into them too deeply. We might try to during the captain's cabin. Stick around. Radio audience, we got to run. We'll see you over here. Live long and prosper.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid radio program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Hey folks, this is Scotty Roberts, and this is the Intrepid radio broadcast. I've been broadcasting for about 20 years now, covering such topics as science, politics, the paranormal, weird science, weird world history, archaeology, and the paranormal. Everything from ghosts to cryptids to creepy things that go bump in the night. So every week I bring you 3 new episodes. Come and join my channel and also be a patron to this site. So see the details below, and we'll see you here. Dave, I love you, brother.
I miss you too.
I miss you too, I heard.
Yep,
Did you guys hear that?
I heard that.
I miss you, Dave. Well, hey, greetings and welcome back. Welcome to the Captain's Cabin, everybody. If you are new here, this is the after show. And we go as short as we want or as long as we want, depending on what's going on, who's here, what the conversation is like. So welcome to the program. And welcome to the show from earlier. Thanks for being here, I should say, more accurately. And welcome to the after show, where it's supposed to be a little more casual. Now, of course, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, the radio show, Odyssey Radio is going to shut down. He's going to take that on a little hiatus, I think, for a while. And so we're no longer going to be broadcasting on the radio station, but we will still be affiliated. We'll still run this show through their software. But the show itself is going to be solely on my YouTube channel, my Patreon channel, my Facebook and X and Instagram and other places where we can run this show live. It just will no longer be an audio format over on Odyssey Radio. That's going away for a while. And so for the time being, I want to say hello to Robert Pitts. That's Terry Pitts, if you don't know him, from Kenny's show. Susie. Susie says, "R." Well, R, yes. And JP says, "Howdy, howdy." So glad you're all coming in for the second hour of the show. Sorry if you missed the first hour. And you can go back and listen to the archive of that right here on my YouTube channel. That should be up tomorrow. It propagates before it's really fully back on. So you'll find it here if you want to listen back to that. And so that's all I got to say to lead into that. So welcome, everyone. If you want to call into the show and you want to talk about this, perhaps this topic in particular, ghosts, seeing them in your house, wondering if they're there, wondering if what you're seeing is true, wondering if there is a haunting in your house, wondering how to deal with it. I don't have all the answers for that, but I've got ways to detect it, ways to find out, and ways to see what's going on. And probably a few ways to get rid of them if they're bothering you. And, here's the whole thing about getting rid of them, too. You can pretty much just kind of tell a ghost or a spirit, see ya, bye, don't want you here anymore. You can tell it to stop. You can tell it to move on. And it generally will do that. Now, there are some that won't. It takes a little more work, a little more effort. Then, of course, you got spirits, which are a totally different thing than ghosts. So, it's an interesting, life can get really interesting when you start trying to test and see what you've got there. If something is there that's actually there that is an entity, or Robert Pitts, Terry Pitts, how you doing, brother? It's good to see you, Terry. There is, by the way, anybody wants it, that's the link. Copy that link that I pasted in and paste it into your browser. That's going to bring you up down here underneath this window on my screen, and I can bring you in for a call if you want to contribute to the show. So, like when I had the spirit in the ghost in my house way back, and I've told this story a few times, different versions, or not versions, lengths of it. Not all of you have heard it. Some have heard it, maybe. And you can here's the story. Sorry, I got a little distracted. Somebody shut both my doors. I think it's raining. So in this particular story, we had the ghost of a woman that said she knew me from my high school days, who, and this happened when I first knew Rainey. We're talking January of 2006 is when this happened in my house. And Rainey was there along with my friends, a couple of my friends who were mother and daughter witches, and one or two other people. Broad daylight, and we got made contact with something, and it's without going into the whole story. And it spelled out its name. It was this girl I knew in high school. Nobody would have known who this is. Nobody would have not known the woman that was doing the pendulum reading on this. Spelled out the name, and there's no way that she would ever have known who this person was. Because at this point, 2006, I had been graduated from high school, for what would it be? 78 was when I graduated. So that would be 22 years plus 6 more, 28 years earlier. No. Yeah. But this girl had also died about 13 years before that. The one that I had dated. And this is the voice she picked up. Well, the next day, when everybody was gone, and beautiful, bright, sunshiny, 30 below zero winter day in January, sun shining in through the windows, and in my bedroom, I said, well, look, I said, if that's really you, I said to the girl whose voice had come across in the reading. I'm quickly trying to find ways to try to abbreviate the story. That's why I'm stumbling over some of my words. But I said, if you're really here, if you want to give me a sign, that would be fantastic. And I hadn't even finished talking. And there was a big, on the floor, the wood floor between me and the bed in the room, the doorway where I was standing. And that's where I kind of, I jumped a little bit. I go, whoa, hey, that'll do. And I said, that's where I first said, you can make yourself known here, but don't scare me. Don't wake me up in the middle of the night. I'll pee my bed. So there are things that manifest themselves to you and make themselves known. And that's somebody who had not moved on, that said through this medium who was doing the reading the night before, said that this woman believes that she's saying you were the love of her life, and it was totally unfulfilled. And we were dating in high school. We were 2 years apart in high school. I was a year younger than my class. She was slightly older than her class. We were 2 years school classes apart, but we were like within 6 months of age of each other. So at that time, that matters. We were about the same age. But I went off to college, and she stayed home and finished high school. Her dad was a professor at the seminary that was also attached to our whole big church and school and everything there. And I left town and went to college, and we didn't really break up. We just, hey, I love you. I'll see you later. I'm going to college. You're not coming along, and I'll see you when I come home. And, we saw each other very little after that. And then I bumped into her many years later, 10 years or more later, and she was married. And then what I had heard several years after that was that she had gotten pregnant, had severe diabetes, died. Her body just shut down when she was, I don't know if it was during childbirth or because of the pregnancy. And I'd heard she had died. And the woman, the medium who was doing this reading, the pendulum reading in my house, said she's been with you about 13 years, some 12 or 13 years. And it worked out. Trust me, it worked out to the time she passed. So I don't know if that's who that was or somebody who was mimicking or what it was. So, hey, everybody, this is Terry Pitts. Sarah says, does that mean you will have more guests? What did I say? Sarah, I'm not. Oh, wait, you're here in the chat room or here in the. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, Scotty.
How you doing?
I'm all right. It's Friday.
Yeah, it is. I just saw your comment. Does that mean you will have more guests? Was that posed to
that
me?
was in reference to if you're just going to be streaming through YouTube.
Oh.
Because I think it was the radio that was stopping you
Yes.
from having the.
That does mean that the actual show itself, we're going to start bringing in more guests, and
That'll be good.
that'll be very good. I like working off of guests. I like playing off of guests, and not everybody's going to be here live in the studio with me, so I think it'll still be very good to have a guest on and to talk. I want to get back into that because I haven't done that for a few years, so it'll be fun to do that.
It would be a good change of pace.
It certainly would. So, and you can be the wittiest, wisest speaker on the planet, and you start doing a show every day that's just you. There's very few people that can pull that off and keep everybody entertained and interested. And it's funny, a show like this one, where you want to, even if you want to inform somebody, it's got to be entertaining, or people aren't going to listen to it. So there are very few people I know that pull off the one-man show thing, at least on a daily basis. Or no, I'm not doing daily anymore, but you get what I mean. Maybe there's more than I think there are. And so it'll be a nice change. Let's put it that way. So a nice old change. Water. So what's going on with you?
So, of course, paranormal topics. I'm all over that.
Yeah.
Which, in reference to how people are, may get haunted or may experience a haunting. It raises a question, because a lot of hauntings and openings and portals that are formed, or it has to do with the people mostly.
Yes.
And the interaction that they have. Like people have traumatic events which may lead to have them experience like psychokinetic phenomenon, or even your regular run of the mill haunting and all that. So trauma is a big one. I mean, it's not the only one. There are many ways of which a haunting, like you were saying earlier, they may manifest, or I was using the word infestation.
Yes.
Which, it does
it's
have
form of the same word. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it does have the connotation that it's something that's not wanted.
Yes.
Like you're infested by ants, or you're infested by an energy that's trying to attach to you and affect you. And then it goes back into the whole idea of psychology. So that's psychological energy. There's more different types of energy than it seems like we seem to understand. And we can understand energy in the physical world as through physics and math and science and all that.
Yes.
But there's also seems to be a what you would call either a spiritual energy, a mental energy, psychological energy that does, which we see the effects of in the physical world. So that it also is an indication, or at least to me, that or a little bit of validation that there's something there.
Yes.
Right. So as far as hauntings go, and even in Islamic faith and Christian faith, you have the tales of when after Jesus was crucified, he presumably went down and harrowed hell.
Right.
That some people I had an interesting conversation the other day with someone who considered that an out of body experience. So I mean, it was an interesting conversation.
An out of body experience. Well, I suppose in a way,
but
I wouldn't call it by definition, but.
Well, I mean, nobody. I mean, as far as I know, I don't know there of any text indicating that somebody touched Jesus in hell. I mean, he went to go preach, and.
So they say, yeah, whatever that means.
Yeah, I mean, after after the resurrection, there was that whole. I don't know if it's apocryphal, but I mean, the tale of the doubting Thomas.
Yes.
That he said, if it's you, let me touch your wounds or touch your robe, or
right. So I
know that
the whole doubting Thomas scene, right?
Right. So
and what did Jesus do when he saw him? According to the story, he goes, "Hey, Thomas, here I am." Come on, stick your finger in that, and and he didn't. Apparently, he just dropped to his knees. So
right. And then like with any other types of belief, there's differences in perspective, different levels of belief. Some people go to the paranormal very quickly. Some, it takes a lot. They're more skeptical. I mean, that depends on your experiences and personality and your willingness to believe, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how often do you hear of cases where an atheist becomes a believer? I mean, it does happen, I guess.
It happens,
yeah, but I mean, as far as on the whole, those are rare and far in between.
Yes.
And it has to be something not just from a religious perspective, but it has to be universal. I can't say the word universalizable.
Yes.
I mean, it encompasses, because you see that particular pattern on and off again all over the world. It's like I think someone in the chat was saying earlier, they had ghosts in Sumeria.
Yes, they
They
did.
have, in every, if you, spin a globe and put a finger on the map, and you'll find a version of a belief in spirits, or
there is an interesting way that the biblical text in the New Testament confirms that belief in ghosts was already a well grandfathered in entrenched belief.
right.
It was when what was it? It was when the disciples saw Jesus walking on the water in that story.
Right.
And then they say, a bunch of them were going, "That's not him. That's a ghost." Well, how did they know what a ghost was if they had no reference point? They have obviously had long history of reference points.
Right.
And we know from other cultures.
Definitely culture. I mean,
yes,
we, especially with the evolution of our culture nowadays, we seem to have gotten away from, belief in spirits and magic and all that stuff. The everyday sort of things. I mean, you see it more in the ancient world if you compare it to now. So it seems like, the pendulum is swinging the other way. And then now, I guess in some ways you're seeing a resurgence of the paranormal.
Yeah.
Something that always existed.
Yes. So. Professor Bauer says the paranormal arena is like ufology, hundreds of anecdotal stories repeating the same theme with nothing new or empirical evidence. And, that's the big thing, is what constitutes empirical evidence. Is it a ghost has to come up and say, hey, I'm a ghost, take my picture. Hey, everybody, ghost, that's me. Or
I mean, Bigfoot's more camera shy than I am.
right. Anecdotal evidence to me is stories,
Right.
which is what he refers to here. Anecdotal stories. Yeah, there's a ton of those, a million of those. I've got a million anecdotal stories, things I tell you about, the bang on the floor and the things like that. I didn't have a camera going or a recorder going. I don't have empirical evidence. But I also think that for as much anecdotal stories as we have, with all the people doing this, there's a shitload of empirical evidence. There is evidence that there is something talking. There is evidence that something is moving something. Now, we can cast our aspersions on that and say, oh, well, we don't know. We weren't there. So we don't know if they faked that video or not, or they faked that noise or that
Right.
EVP.
And there's, also a lot of stigma attached.
Right.
But I think, at least in the paranormal field, we have to look beyond the physical world. I mean, we interact, our senses are based on the physical world. So, I mean, and we see there's something out there because we see not a direct effect, or maybe like a middle effect, or further down the line, as far as try to understand it. I mean, it's like you had once talked to, I think, somebody about the ghost box guy, the one who made the ghost boxes. That was
Yeah. Frank Sumption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't Frank. I don't think it was somebody.
Oh, I had a guest. The guest I
Yeah.
had from England.
Him.
Why is his name? His name is
Is it
slipping my
Chris or
mind.
I forgot. But
It'll come to me.
yeah.
Sorry, Chris, if you're listening, or because I'm doing that more and more lately. Is that my old age, or is that my tired brain? I don't know what it
Probably
is.
a little bit of both. But it was like, I learned a lot from that show, actually. But I mean, in terms of understanding EVPs, in that whatever is affecting us, it has to have a carrier wave that links into our world for us to understand it. I mean, for us to even hear it, to manipulate one type of energy manipulating another type too. It's like two tin cans on a string.
Yeah.
Of trying to understand the mode and mechanism of that.
Yes.
But in terms of energy, rather than actual physical tin cans on a string.
And it's like, is it evidence if I evidence is anecdotal when I have no way of passing on that evidence to someone. I can tell you, I was listening on my spirit box and I caught this voice. And I go, that's evidence. Well, that's only evidence to me. It's not evidence to you if you weren't there to hear it.
Right. I mean, that, and
you're passing on the story.
I mean, to have enough evidence to convince someone else is like the holy grail of evidence. It's you're trying to convince something of somebody. So I mean, at the most,
even Michael Shermer, who is the head of the American Skeptic Society or something, very well known, very famous, writer of books, lots of TV shows, lots of interviews over the years. I think one of the more polite skeptics I've seen. He's the chief amongst them, but he is polite in the sense that he doesn't just call people buffoons and things like that. He wrote that book, Why Do Good People Believe Weird Things? And stuff like that. And he asks questions. He said, it's not that I'm a disbeliever. He says, it's that I'm not going on the basis of belief. He says, I want to know. He's the one. Was he the one that coined the phrase extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence? And I don't know if that was him that coined that, but he's used that. And he will get on, and he, to a certain extent, I saw in one show, it was a Larry King interview. That's how long ago that was. And he says his response to hearing things about ghost claims and so on, he goes, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. He says, that doesn't mean that. And he wasn't being impolite. He was debating the issue. Now, this guy who for so many represented skeptical thought, he had his own ghost experience 4 or 5 years ago and wrote a big article on it.
Right, I read. I think I read that. That was about his an old radio and his wedding.
An old radio of his father's on the day of his wedding, and
suddenly
it was doing strange things and playing.
Yeah.
And his claim was, he says, "Look, I'm a scientist." He says, "I'm a skeptic, and all of those things." He's heard every anecdotal story you'd ever want to hear. And he stands for common sense. He stands for reason and skepticism and so on. And he says, I can tell you. He says, my own story is going to be anecdotal to you. He says, but I was there. My wife was there. We experienced this throughout the day. He says, and then that radio has never played since. And he says, all of these things add up to me as, to you, an anecdotal story, to me, a paranormal experience. He said it was outside the norm of what should have been happening.
And that's the way it should be. I mean, because ultimately you have to convince yourself rather than anybody else. Because you're never going to be satisfied you'll never satisfy another person.
Yeah.
You have to.
No, he hasn't gone totally over to the other side,
Yeah.
so to speak. But he is also a little more sensitive to the other side. I get it.
I mean, some of it is being tactful.
Yeah.
Also.
Jason, how you doing?
I'm exhausted.
Yeah. You moving?
Yeah. Spent the last week with the Packers here. They loaded up with all my stuff, and they rolled out earlier this afternoon. And
so your stuff is all gone.
Yeah, except for things that I'm carrying with me and air mattress and that sort of thing. But
so when do you officially hop in the car and head out?
Well, that's a multifaceted answer. It's a multifaceted answer.
You got to give your goods about a week to get there, I suppose. And
yeah, they say they could potentially be there by the 19th. They could be there sooner. I know they're in a bit of a
19th.
Yeah, but I don't. My official, as it stands right now, last day at work isn't until the 17th.
Yeah.
So that may change.
Sure.
Depending on how quickly I can get the rest of the stuff closed out. I just did the Riker maneuver.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah. you straddle the chair. And then you pull the shirt down. That's the Riker maneuver.
Yeah, but yeah, just exhausted. I didn't hardly sleep at all last night. My air mattress had a hole in it.
Nice.
And so it was wake up when I'm at an odd angle.
And flat on the floor.
Well, no, I never got flat on the floor. I always got in this weird, torso, head down.
Only partially inflated.
Yeah. So, reinflating and then going back to sleep and then rinse, repeat for the rest of the night. So, yeah, they left and I went into nap mode. And
yes.
Woo.
By the way, I like what Chuck Thurston says here. After 25 years of investigations, I've recorded a few hundred solid EVPs. It's not proof of a ghost, but we've helped people find answers to what's going on in their home.
Yeah.
And it's not proof of a ghost. You're right. That doesn't prove to us that that's a ghost delivering those little bits and pieces of audio.
Well, that's one of those interesting things, when you see on the shows or whatever, they bust out the quote unquote spirit box or, whatever the latest iteration that filters out all the static noise.
Right.
And so you're just getting the words that come through. And if the thing's sitting there frequency hopping, it's conceivable that you're just picking up snippets of frequency coming in.
Sure it is.
Or hey, whatever entity is there, if there is an entity there, it could be.
Well, I'll tell you,
utilizing that.
it's like the little clip of that I say is Uncle Dave.
Yep.
I miss you. I miss you too. There's a sentence, and it's all one voice.
That's where it starts getting interesting.
Yeah. And I've had other things. The story I tell of my daughter and I sitting, God, it was half her life ago, 16 years ago, because she's 32 now, and she was 16 at the time. Sitting, and we've got a little shack hack, we called them. It was a spirit box, but it was built out of a Radio Shack AM transistor, digital or transistor radio. You just do a little rewiring
Just stop, Scotty. That's painful to hear.
I don't even know what I'm talking about when it comes
to no, it's because you're sitting there saying Radio Shack.
Oh, yeah.
all of a sudden, I can feel my hair turning grayer and the arthritis setting into my joints.
Yes, Radio Shack is no more. But
don't even mention
using that, and we picked up a voice that was distinctly said it was my aunt, and started asking us questions.
Yeah,
It asked the question, "Where's Janie?" Her sister, my mom.
Yeah.
And it's like nobody is faking that out there.
Right.
There's no way to fake that and it's
like there at the Otis Saga when Chip was throwing out all that stuff about from my grandfather and when he touched Herman's dog tag and came back and was like there's something going on with your grandmother's teeth. She's missing her teeth. Did she lose her dentures or something like that? And after that, I called my grandmother. Well, I think it was the next morning because I think that when Chip did that, it was late in the evening. But she was like, "Well, I didn't lose them, but I got a new set, and they didn't fit, so I don't have my stuff."
Talking for a second, I gotta put this on mute.
So it's it's interesting when you see those kinds of things, and it becomes harder to refute. When they start putting out specific points of data and asking very pointed questions.
Yes. Hey, by the way, my son, I got to show you this. Here's my son, Flynn. There he is. Say hi, Flynn.
Hi, Flynn.
This is Jason. That's Sarah.
Hey,
she's the one with the pink cheeks. So, but Flynn, he got. They went to the school. The school had this big free clothing drive. Everybody could bring their spare clothes and throw them on tables. And so Flynn went and picked these shorts up. He came down here just now laughing. He says, "Look at these. Here, pull that up so they can see the waist on those." He's got a belt on him. He takes the belt off. They go out, twice as far. And just looking at that makes me laugh.
It's nothing a sewing machine can't handle.
Yeah. So,
the MC Hammer pants will come back.
Found his Anderson into a Home Depot shirt. He goes, "Oh, this is a Home Depot shirt. I got to take this one home." So there is his new summer outfit from the free clothing drive at the school.
There you go.
As long as it's functional, it keeps him cool, then
You're gonna wear that. He's gonna wear this to school on Monday. So,
there's going to be anybody who's like, "Hey, that was off of my table."
Yeah, really. Oh, that was my husband's shirt. That's awesome, son.
I like 3.
That is just what?
I got like 2 pairs of shorts like this too.
That's awesome. What are those, like 44 in the waist or something?
Probably.
Wow.
I have shorts on underneath.
Here, stand over here. You got here. Look at that. There they are. My son, who's a whole 28 in the waist, drenching and soaking wet.
God, I remember.
So those have got to be like 44s or something. That's crazy, son. Thanks for showing me. Thanks for coming down
Mhm.
and sharing that. Awesome.
And
Here, let me see this. Keep talking.
Braden found a belt for me.
So,
Jewels on it.
Jason, and since
Nice.
you've lived on
Here.
bases and everything, which militaristic sites and everything tend to have high rates of paranormal activity. Have you experienced that living on base, or?
I personally have not. So for instance, where I'm at right now at Grand Forks, this base was completed and the runway was opened in the 57 to 58. So it's not a very old base. But at Leonard Wood, and this is all secondhand. I didn't experience this, but
Right.
Fort Leonard Wood, which it's been around for a hot minute. Predates World War II. They did massive expansions in World War II, and because it became a massive training facility, and in that expansion, they annexed and absorbed a number of small towns, right? And so there are still remnants of the towns on the base. If you go take the main drag and you go out Range Road out to the very back gate, it takes you back past all of the live fire ranges and things like that. There's one range called Bloodland Range. And there is a story with Bloodland Range that a soldier was on guard duty out there at the range one night. Can't remember if it was one soldier or if it was two. But they were out there on guard duty at the range, and they had what appeared to be some civilians show up, and they were kind of, deliverance looking type characters.
Nice.
And basically, the gist of it is that the town and the cemetery is out in the impact area on the range. Now, they tried to move things where they could and stuff like that, but they basically left all the structure standing. And then, with all the live fire exercises, everything just got obliterated over time. But so these civilian types, looking like they walked off the set of Deliverance, show up. And one of them has the stereotypical big ceramic over the shoulder to take a swig,
Oh, nice.
moonshine jugs. And they forced the soldiers to drink. And
force a soldier to drink.
well, you make them drink. How do you force anybody to do anything? We'll rough you up. That kind of thing. They made them join into drinking. And it was, the people it wasn't anybody that anyone had ever seen, didn't fit any current day physical descriptions, etc. And basically chain of command folks showed up, next morning for, relief of guard and whatnot. And these guys were still sauced. And, there was no jugs, there were no bottles, there were no any sort of evidence around to show that they were brought a bunch of booze on duty. And the guys were very, very adamant that hey, we didn't bring anything out here. We didn't come out here to do this. And the best they could figure is that it was probably, the ghosts of residents of Bloodland.
Interesting.
Yeah, Morgan, ask about that. It's a little bit more of an eclectic story. There's probably not a whole lot of people that really remember that one. I heard it in passing and then saw something about it on the internet when I was searching around just for hauntings through Missouri, and that one popped up, and I can't remember the page. It was a page of just 140 some odd listings of various haunted places. And but yeah, it's just stuff like that. But there are a lot of installations where you do see stuff and hear stuff. The So if you go out to Okinawa, on Kadena, one of the bases that we have out there, they have basically some places where, like, Japanese people hid during the attacks and various things like that, like structures, almost like, sewers or bunkers or things like that. And so you hear about stuff out at Kadena, on Okinawa. There's stuff that pops up in Hawaii, all the time out there. There's another one. I can't remember if it's like out at Anderson on Guam or if it's on Hawaii, but basically, angry spirit haunting and some of the on-base housing that's more of like the field grade officer housing. And it's like really old, well-maintained kind of, trying to think of how to describe some of this stuff. It's not exactly plantation like, but it kind of is, has the covered porches with pillars kind of thing. But yeah, you get angry haunting stuff out there. And, some people think it's related to, stuff from World War II. Some people think it's stuff that really, predates that. Out at Wright-Patterson at the Air Force Museum, they have parts. They don't have the whole plane. They have like a engine, and they have a propeller, and I think a propeller blade, and some other bits and pieces of the Lady Be Good. The Lady Be Good was a B-24 Liberator that crashed in Lebanon, and the whole crew perished. And basically, what it was is, and actually, there is a movie that is based off of that has William Shatner in it, where they find the B-25 out in the desert, and they're trying to figure out, what happened, where's the crew, et cetera, et cetera. But basically, the crew bails out. Some of the crew bails out, and they all kind of, string along the way because the plane's going, so they're kind of strung out across the desert. And they kind of, best they could figure is they kind of linked up. And the Lady Be Good, like, basically when she crashed, she landed, right? Just basically ran out of gas and slowly dropped in altitude because of losing airspeed, and it really turned into a landing rather than just nosing straight in.
Yeah.
And they found that the crew, some of the crew had gotten by it, and they found journals, and the journal from one of the crew members who was keeping a log of stuff. Crew members linked up, and they were all like, "Hey, we got to get to this place. We're going to go ahead and we're going to hoof it." And they basically gradually died of exposure and dehydration along the way in the direction there. And they found their bodies, every so many miles kind of thing, heading in a direction. But they recovered the personnel, but they never recovered the whole aircraft. They took parts of the aircraft, and they brought those back. And they are now in the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force.
Oh, wow.
And when you talk to, like, night guardsmen and things like that, night maintenance people, whatever, they hear noises in the hangar where the Lady Be Good parts are. There's also a helicopter in there that the pilot was shot. I think it was in Vietnam. Sometimes they say you can sometimes see a person sitting in that seat. There's all kinds of little things like that. So then you start looking at the, attachment style hauntings, where it's attached to an object or artifact.
It's interesting. That reminds me of that old Twilight Zone episode where they had, I think it was Twilight Zone, a crew of a some kind of bomber.
It was a B-25, and they kept hearing the jets. The guy was like,
Yeah.
kept hearing that, right? Yeah.
And the crew is there. They're all World War II era, and crash landed in the desert. And they'd play, baseball. They had a bat and a ball, and they're just kind of waiting around to see if they're going to get picked up or rescued. And
Right.
if you're in the jets, like you say, and it turns out you don't know this at first, but they're all dead.
Yeah.
And they're ghosts, and they're attached to this ruin of this wreckage of this plane. And as they're found, they start seeing that there are. Do they see them, or does it just show that there is a modern day rescue team that's found this wreckage?
Yeah.
And they're recovering the remains of these soldiers that are all skeletons now. And as they take each one up and bag them up and take them off, they disappear amongst each other as ghosts.
Yeah.
And the last one, he's all alone. He's all alone because his body is under the tail of the plane.
Yeah.
And so they never found it because they never moved the wreckage of the plane.
Right.
So there he is all by himself, the final scene, and he picks up the ball and he bats it out into the desert and runs after it. And there he is. He's all alone.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting.
I'm trying to remember what the William Shatner one was, because he plays by that point he's an Air Force. I want to say like lieutenant colonel or major, because when the story takes place, they had transitioned from Army Air Forces to.
Was it pre Star Trek Shatner or post?
Oh,
It's before.
Yeah, it may have been before.
Okay.
Yeah, let's see. Keep talking. I'm going to look this up. I'll get an answer for you guys.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
But I mean, it seems that not only with residual hauntings and the fact that sometimes we have images of ghostly people in period clothing or any type of manifestation, it seems to indicate that there is a type of historical energetic layering. So even our actions and what we're doing and how we're living our life, we're constantly throwing out energy. So I mean, and all these after effects, if you want to call them, it seems to indicate that there's something more than just what's in the physical world.
That's interesting, Chuck. It's a little, so what do they call it? Psychokinesis? Feeling the actual. So Chuck
psychometry. Psychometry is
psychometry.
Yeah.
Medic helicopter on the forward deck of the USS Hornet. Large bullet holes in it. I touched it once. I won't ever again. The death I saw, not again. Yeah, that's.
Yeah. It's always,
and that's it. And that's the stuff you can't. That's not the empirical evidence that will prove to anybody.
Well, right, and that
exists.
That's where it gets difficult, because it's like, how do you scientifically record that data?
You don't.
Like I don't know of a sensor that can. You know what I mean? Like,
right. That's where I say,
do with that.
The best you can do is present the evidence that you pick up. If you record anything, either visual or audio, or you're filming yourself using a spirit box or an ITC device, those kinds of things, like the spirit box, that's pretty astounding stuff.
So the Shatner movie is called Soul Survivor.
Okay.
And it was filmed in '70, so it's post Star Trek.
Post Star Trek. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because it says here, while the film follows the fate of six-man crew of a B-25 Mitchell bomber, Soul Survivor is loosely based off the 1958 discovery of the B-24 Liberator bomber, Lady Be Good, sorry, I was wrong, wasn't Lebanon, Libya. Libyan desert.
Hell,
Good.
yeah.
And her 9-man crew it disappeared without a trace in 1943, following its first and only combat mission in World War II. The bodies of 8 of the crew were found in 1960.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was that a ghost story? Sole Survivor?
Yes.
So that was because I'm looking at some pictures, stills from the. It's got the World War II guys, and it's got the Shatner here in a more modern military uniform.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the film I saw. So
Yep.
there's the guy with the baseball bat right there.
Right. Yeah. There was a Twilight Zone episode that followed that. I'll see if I can figure that one out too. But yeah, the Libyans actually recovered the aircraft many years later, and they did not do a very good job of recovering the aircraft because it's in exponentially worse shape now than it was when it crash landed. Like, it was incredibly well preserved. Like, it was surprisingly undamaged.
Yeah.
For what it had been through. I think the empennage and the tail had kind of snapped off. But, you had bent propellers, but everything else was pretty much intact. Now it's all, dented and crushed where they, picked it up with equipment and didn't take a lot of care with it. It sits in an outdoor storage yard, and we've done nothing to try to get it back.
By the way, remembering this film now that I'm looking at pictures, it's interesting. In 1970, you have the captain of the USS Enterprise from Star Trek, and you have the Admiral Nelson, Richard Basehart, from Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
Yeah.
Is also in this as a starred general of some kind. So they were both in that.
So the Twilight Zone episode is King 9 will not return.
Okay.
King 9 will not return. And that's where they're all like, what's with the modern jets? And this explains it all, that realization.
Yes.
But imagine, if you will.
Yes. Imagine, if you will. So, yeah. So good story, good storyline. And how much of that, I thought one of the more accurate ghost movies, speaking of pop culture,
Don't say
I had
ghost.
seen had been Nicole Kidman in The Others. Have you seen that?
I think I've seen bits and pieces of it, but I haven't seen
That
it.
movie, when I saw that for the first time with Rainey, that was, to me, seemed like all the things put into what we have learned about how ghosts might actually act, how they might interact, how they might. It was a very interesting film. If you haven't watched it, I don't want to say much at all. If you haven't watched it, because there's a intricate plot to it, but that was something that I watched that and you go, that might be how ghosts experience things on the other side from human, because there was this scene where she's waiting for her husband to come back from the war. And the husband's played by Peter Eccleston. He was, what have I seen him in? Many things, but he was one of the Doctor Who's. When Doctor Who first resurged a few years ago, and he was the first one. But anyway, he was in this movie as the husband, and she sees him walking toward their mansion down this misty road, and she runs to meet him, and it's like he almost doesn't recognize her at first.
Yeah.
And she's greeting him, and she's trying to lead him to the house, and he says, I'm looking for my home.
Mhm.
And he kept repeating that kind of, I'm looking for my home. And then and he ends up spending the night and all of this, and the children are there, their kids, but then in the morning he leaves, and he's got to leave again, and he leaves and he says the same thing, I have to find my home, kind of thing. It's like he's the wandering soul, and they don't define it as that in the film, but as you're watching that, you're going, this is the ghost of her husband,
Mhm.
and he can't find his way home.
Yeah.
And even though she brought him into the home, he didn't recognize you still has to leave and wander to
Mhm.
find his home, and almost in a detached PTSD sort of way
Right.
in the spirit world. So so if you've never seen that, folks, The Others, that came out about 10 years ago, maybe more, but you should watch that. You'd enjoy that for a good ghost movie.
So yeah, I just looking through here with that King 9 will not return thing from Twilight Zone. The closing narration is it's pretty interesting. It says, enigma buried in the sand, a question mark with broken wings that lies in a silent grace as a marker in a desert shrine. Odd how the real consorts with the shadows, how the present fuses with the past. How does it happen? The question is on file in the silent desert, and the answer is waiting for us in
The Twilight Zone.
But that's kind of all the questions that we're asking tonight.
Yeah,
how is this? How is this going on? How has this happened?
Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, there's a whole plethora of other stories though. Back to your original question there, Sarah. It's probably too many for me to recall at this point.
I mean, that's fine, but I mean, what the point is, there's a plethora of them. It's too many to ignore.
Yes.
Right.
A handful is
Exactly.
like, oh, okay, whatever. But given the volume, that seems to be a suggestion that something is going on.
You start to see with stuff like that, like with with military bases and like battlefields and whatnot, like for a really long time, people have been talking about places like Gettysburg.
Mm-hmm.
And that you can talk to so many people and you can see so many accounts of driving through the park, because there are roads where you can drive through to get to other battle sites, and but you're going through, you're walking through, and you hear things or you see things. There was during the battle, there was a whole thing with people seeing an eerie glow on the battlefield. And especially amongst and around the wounded and the dead. And it's all traced back to a bioluminescent bacteria that would where the wounds were would kind of develop there in colonies, because it feeds on whatever infected flesh, etc. It actually ended up saving a lot of people because it fought off infection that would have otherwise killed them. But people still talk about seeing weird glows here and there, even long after that. And they see and hear stuff in the town, as well. So it's where you have massive concentrations of emotion and energy and conflict and strife and things like that, there always seems to be that imprint upon.
It's like what we experienced at the Farnsworth house.
Mm-hmm.
The man who owned that during the Civil War, and just some odd. That was the EVP story, where
I think we also shouldn't forget that yes, there's these concentrations of energy, but we have to have empathy too, in order to interact with it.
Sure.
So
yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's where
Otherwise,
like
you know, we're
sensitivity.
just, you know, two different planes just interact, not never touching, right?
Mhm.
These points of touching is where we have these interactions of paranormal
Yeah.
Yeah.
things. So,
Well, and on that note, we're at the end of the show. So we're going to kind of call it for tonight. Sarah, I appreciate all that input.
sure.
That's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah,
It's
we'll
still
have to
always
keep an eye on
interesting to
Jason
talk
because
about.
he's going to be moving to a new house. That's usually an indication of he may develop a haunting. You know, he's
You just
introducing
may.
new
Yeah.
energy. New energy. in the house
I
might
look at it like
stir.
this: the house was built in 1954. I don't see structures that young as typically, having the
Although
haunting
new
type
builds,
activity.
new constructions, brand new constructions can have spirits or ghosts attached to them. It all
It
Well,
could be
yeah,
attached to
especially
the
where it's
land.
built.
Probably
Yeah,
not.
people can bring them in.
Well, I
The
mean, and you
area
said it was
can bring them
54,
in.
right? So there's probably lead paint. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's all encapsulated. Shush.
it is.
Well, but that's it goes back to like you talked about attachment to a land or the place or things like that, and it goes back to the same kind of thing with the accounts of hauntings from Gettysburg.
Yeah.
The whole area, like Northern Virginia. Growing up as a kid, I remember we got
Whole place
into
is
a house.
haunted.
Oh yeah,
the whole state's haunted.
no, right, yeah, exactly. But we got into a new house in a newer development. And this is when I was third grade, something like that. And but I remember my
See, it's very
parents talking about it, and I remember them continuing to talk about it afterwards, that when they were developing the whole area where the neighborhood was and making the different expansions on the neighborhood, they're leveling the land,
Right.
and digging the foundations, and they're just finding Civil War era bullets, belt buckles, buttons, coins, all manner of different things from the daily life and the daily kit, carried and worn, by troops moving through the areas, is just littered with it.
Yeah.
So it's
That's like watching things on the. I was watching a couple of different documentaries on the Battle of the Little Bighorn,
yeah,
Custer's Last Stand, and all of that. The greasy
the greasy grass, yeah,
and how they have found, LIDAR, satellite, ground penetrating,
Yep.
all these different things combined, how they have reconstructed the battle, and how because they can tell where there were groups of men sitting and firing by shell casings that had dropped versus bullets found downrange, versus, and they could tell where, there was a group of men that had broken off and run this way, and you could see they each one got picked off as they're going down through this gully, and you find the bullets and the shell case, and they were able to totally reconstruct forensically
right.
the battle and the way
Which then changed the whole perception of the battle. I actually remember when all that was going on, and because the historical thing given that everybody was taught in school,
yeah,
prior to 19 whatever, was it's this big rallying last stand,
right.
And they're all encircled by the Sioux, and
right.
And they're fighting to the last man on the on a hilltop. No, it was a nasty, sad, running,
very
gun battle.
nasty, ugly, and because they show that whole battle is going up this, it's not a big hill like this; it's a sweeping hillside, and the whole battle is advancing up this hillside, and they're dropping all along the way on the way up. So
Well, I think they determined the final shots of the battle were, made by some cavalry trooper that had managed to cross a creek and get by a tree or something like that, and was killed there.
Yep.
Because that's where all the shell casings stop.
And they were
it stopped.
also figured that a lot of these guys that died on Last Stand Hill, they were suicides.
Yeah.
That they shot themselves rather than be killed, butchered, what they felt was going to be butchered by the Indians.
Yeah.
And so some of them were, and there were two of his relatives. Wasn't it his brother and his nephew that also died on Last Stand Hill?
Yeah, I think so.
So
I believe so. There may have been another relative that was with another cavalry troop that was maneuvering elsewhere and not directly engaged.
and when you go
but he had
stand out
relatives out
there, you go stand out there, the only cover you have is if you're down in those little gullies that are
Yeah.
running, the washes.
It's once
Other than that,
you're in death lane.
that whole place, it's wide open. It's
Right. And it's all like rolling
hills, rolling prairie land. Yeah.
Right. And it's you really do have no place to hide hardly. And it was, there's something, I really seem to recall something about how they they went through and took all of their, took a bunch of basically war trophies.
Yeah.
And things like that. And there was something about it, whether basically they were like, they're like, no, dump it all. You shouldn't have taken this. Like there was some sort of order given to just leave them as they are. But people went and took stuff anyway. And then they finally made them get rid of it. God, it's been years since I saw a thing about it. So the details are fuzzy, but yeah, it's interesting. I actually haven't been out to the greasy grass. I really want to.
We're hoping to go this summer, my wife and kids and I.
Yeah, it would be. It really is someplace on the need to see list. A buddy of mine was just out there recently, and he was like, "Hey, guess where I am?"
Wow,
like you suck, dude.
And I'd like to go out. I know they don't allow any kind of paranormal stuff go there.
Right.
And I don't know if they have ever, but I think it would still be interesting to walk through and record while you're doing it.
Oh yeah, no, it definitely would. Definitely.
You just can't have a vigil, sit there and do your thing, but
right.
It would be interesting. And the other one was Wounded Knee. I want to stop there on the way. I was actually talking to Ruben Fast Horse last week, who said he would still like to get up here. He wants to go do some ritual sweat lodge type of medicine that he's hoping would have a good effect on him. And he said, if we can do that this summer, he says, I would like to meet up and maybe we can all go, to Wounded Knee and places like that. And he's got other friends out there too. So
yeah,
we're going to see if we can.
I may have to. I've been trying to think of what all to do with my youngest when they come out for the summer. So I may have to see about.
Might have to
heading out that way. Yeah, no, that could be cool.
It'd be a lot of fun.
Right.
Well, anyway, we'll talk about that. It's now 11:10. We're going to get out of here. Sarah, thank you for being here.
Sure, no problem. Thanks, guys.
I appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Later, Sarah.
Have a good weekend. Bye. And I think she already left. So
yeah.
And Jason, good to have you here. And we'll talk
good
about
here,
this
as always
for this summer. It might be an interesting little rendezvous to get together.
No, definitely be worth trying to put together if we can.
Right on.
I know I have a couple of historian summit kind of related things early in the summer that are related to Air Combat Command historians. So I have to probably plan around those, but yeah,
that sounds great.
What we could do.
Right on. All right, brother.
All right.
Take it easy. Have a good weekend. See you maybe Sunday. Bye. Everybody else, thank you for being here. Thanks for being part of the show. And we will see you again on Sunday morning. And until then, live long and prosper.
Bye.